Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Dan and Joe Sports Show. As always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.
All right, Joe, we just got done having an excellent interview with Cole Kubelik, who's from McElroy and Kubelik on Jocks and on ESPN, does a lot of the SEC network games. Gave a really great interview and gave us a lot of his thoughts about what's happening right now within Auburn's athletic department as it relates to Brian Harsin. And relating his own experiences with losing Terry Bowden as a head coach and kind of how that was handled in a really great interview, which of course we'll have podcasts so that everybody can listen to it. And you can also see Cole because we have it on Zoom. Moving back to what we had last Sunday, we want to recap the Super Bowl. Great game. I think it lived up to the hype and was a much better game than neither one of us thought it would be. But in the end, Joe, the thing that got him was exactly what we said would get him. And, we talked about with Cole Kubelik a lot about Auburn's problems with the offensive line the last few years. In the end, no matter how good Joe Cool could be for the Bengals, the offensive line and Aaron Donald is what won that game for the Rams.
No doubt. And right on that point, that last play offensively of the game for the Bengals, I saw the replay. I didn't realize it at first, but Jamar Chase was going to be wide open because Jalen Ramsey fell down on that play. And so had Aaron Donald not got the pass rush on Burrow, that could have been a game-winning touchdown for the Bengals.
Wow. And wouldn't that have been something with the game that Jalen Ramsey had already had? I mean, he had fallen down once, which resulted in a Jamar Chase touchdown. And he had missed another play, too, that caused a touchdown. He got beat twice.
He was on that controversial face mask no call where T. Higgins had the long touchdown to start the second half.
Well, and, it's funny. Talk about, tweets that don't age very well. I tweeted at that point when that happened. I was like, how does it feel, Rams fans, to lose, to have no pass interference call? Doesn't feel very good, does it? And I was really hoping that would ultimately win the game for the Bengals. And then I would have felt like real poetic justice for what happened to the Saints a couple years ago. Unfortunately, this Rams team, and in particular, their defensive line was good enough that they could recover from that play.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely going to be one that the Bengals think about for a while because having that 20-16 lead only to see it evaporate late with just that clutch drive by the Rams, I mean, that's hard to get over.
It is. And, you got to give a lot of kudos to the Rams and to Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp because what an amazing drive that was with so many playmakers out. I mean, of course, you had the Odell Beckham injury in the first half, which was devastating because, I mean, now you can focus completely on Cooper Kupp, who really, until that last drive of the game for the Rams, hadn't done a whole lot. I mean, you're expecting now Cooper Kupp to go out and get 100-plus receiving yards every single game. I think it's pretty much a foregone, agreement now that he is the best receiver in the NFL. And we talked about the line for his receiving yards. I think it was 108.5. And I think you said he would go over. I said he would be just underneath that. But talk about how crazy that is that against a team like that, you still expect Cooper Kupp to do this. And his expectations are so high, Joe, that he got, I think, 92 receiving yards in that game and 2 touchdowns. And he was the offensive MVP. He didn't even clear what his betting odds were. But point being, at the end of that game, when they were bereft of playmakers, even though they knew that Matt Stafford was going to throw it to Cooper Kupp every time he threw it, and every time Cooper Kupp either caught it or he drew a pass interference or a holding.
Yeah, and that was just a beautiful catch and throw on that last touchdown hookup between the two.
It's perfect.
But you also have to credit McVay on the trickeration because they couldn't run the football at all. And so they had to use Kupp to pick up that crucial 4th and 1 earlier on the drive.
No, that was the best play call of the entire game. I mean, you were right. Neither team could run the football. The Rams defensive line and the Bengals defensive line completely stopped the run, and it was not a real part of the game plan for either team. And, I was sitting there on that 4th and 1 thinking, what are they going to do on this play? And when I saw that Kupp run, I was like, that is the best play call that I've seen maybe in the entire postseason.
Yeah, no doubt. That was gutsy. Just brilliantly executed and called by McVay and Kupp. And then the other thing is how long they held the ball in that last drive, to keep the ball away from the Bengals on offense.
That's right. My dad texted me during that game. There was a game where Auburn played USC in football in 2002 where they lost to Carson Palmer. And Carson Palmer had a game-winning drive against Auburn where I think they had the ball for like 9 to 10 minutes in the fourth quarter. And it reminded Dad said this seems a lot like that Carson Palmer drive that he had against Auburn. And it really was. I mean, they held on to the ball for a long time. They picked up third down after third down. They picked up the fourth down. And it completely kept the ball away from Joe Burrow. And they got what they needed to, which was ultimately the touchdown to Cooper Kupp on the fade route.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really the only thing, Dan, I felt like we were missing from the game was overtime, the way it played out. Like, I felt like we were kind of stolen from that on the last drive.
I really thought we were going to get it. I thought we were going to see Shooter McPherson make another field goal to go into OT. And I thought we were going to have even more of a reason for people to hate on the overtime rules, but ultimately didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, but still, a great game, like you said. It would be interesting to see, where both franchises go from here. Will some people retire for the Rams or, will the Bengals have, an opportunity to have a huge championship window going forward?
Yeah, Joe, I mean, you feel like by seeing that Bengals team, that the only thing they are away from winning a Super Bowl is that offensive line. But there's other luxuries they could use. I think they could use another wide receiver for sure. Obviously Jamar Chase he's a number one guy. He's a Pro Bowler. T. Higgins is a good wide receiver, but he's not great. I think you need to get a guy can be either a number 3 or a number 2. Because right now you definitely need a guy that can compete with Higgins for 2, but that also could be a really solid 3, I think.
I think so. Maybe a better tight end upgrade too. Maybe, some running back depth wouldn't hurt them as well behind Mixon.
I think a more bruiser running back would be good. Mixon's good at catching the ball, but he's not the best, up the middle. And I think they need, obviously there's not a lot of Derrick Henrys, but more someone in that kind of size range that they can get some of those tougher yards. They don't really have that right now.
They need to draft Snoop Connor from Ole Miss.
That would be nice. Hey, you know what Snoop Connor would have done? He'd have gotten that 1 yard.
He would have. They would not have tried to pass at the end.
No. Even with Aaron Donald on that 3rd and 1, he'd have run through that and gotten that 1 yard. Now, that might have been all he's gotten, but he'd have gotten that 1 yard.
Right. They would have lived to see another play.
Exactly. That's where the Bengals are at right now. I think they're definitely sky's the limit right now, but they need to address that offensive line and then, receiver and running back. But those are things that can be done. Joe, now I think let's talk about the Rams again. Matt Stafford now is definitely for sure, I think maybe a first ballot Hall of Famer now. Do you think that he's going to hang it up, or do you see him playing a couple more years for the Rams?
I think he'll play a couple more years. Just the connection with he and Kupp right now, I think he'd be, crazy to stop right now, but he's definitely accomplished at this point, I think, everything he wants to. I would say that either McVay or Donald would be more likely to step away at this point. McVay, maybe not necessarily for good, but I could see him in many ways going the TV route for a couple of years to take a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'd heard you talk about that before, which is so crazy because McVay's like 36, 37. He's a young guy.
He's the youngest coach in the league, so that would be really ironic if he were to retire.
It'd be kind of funny, what if Sean Payton ultimately took the Rams job after McVay retired? Boy, that would be something right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, we'll see what he does. Maybe he comes back next year. I mean, even if they come back, it will be tough to repeat, and largely because their division is just so loaded.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how good the 49ers are. 49ers really should have beaten the Rams the 3rd time right there, but couldn't finish the deal. And then the Seahawks are, a team that you always feel like is pretty close to being good. They always have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And, the Cardinals obviously took a lot of steps forward this year. And For a while, they were one of the best teams in the NFL, and they kind of faded towards the end of the season. But you got to think with all the star power that they have with J.J. Watt and Kyler Murray that they're a team that probably is going to make the playoffs next year.
Absolutely, absolutely. But credit the Rams. They were gutsy with all the trades and free agency, and it did pay off with the championship to kind of validate the franchise's recent success.
Absolutely. I mean, they've done everything but win a World Series. I mean, but win a Super Bowl lately. And, they decided we've been so close. Let's just go all in to do it. And you know what? They did it and it worked. And, speaking of going all in, we were talking about that play call with the Cooper Kupp run. Can you imagine how much the Chiefs were like kicking themselves and Andy Reid over his coaching decision on that out pass to Tyreek Hill on the goal line against the Bengals in the first half? If he had just run that exact same play that they ran with Cooper Kupp with Tyreek Hill, Chiefs would have won that game. That probably never even would have been a game. It would have been 28-3, and Chiefs would have been in the Super Bowl. That's exactly the play they needed to run right there, was what the Rams did with Cooper Kupp. That play with Tyreek Hill, there's no way they would have stopped it.
No, absolutely not. And to your point, I would argue that Chiefs fans and even Bills fans are more disappointed about how the season ended than Bengals fans, just with how close both of those teams were to making it to the Super Bowl.
Oh, 100%. I think they're both very disappointed. And in fact, they're the number 1 and 2 teams that have the best odds to win next year's Super Bowl. I think the Bills actually are the odds-on betting favorite to win next year's Super Bowl, which I'm sure they're really excited to hear because they remember when there were 4 years in a row when they were the odds-on favorites to win the Super Bowl.
No, I mean, they're absolutely loaded. It's just psychologically clearing that hurdle.
Exactly. And I mean, that was the most upsetting part about that Bills-Chiefs game, was that they did everything they could. They just didn't win the coin toss.
Yeah. I mean, Josh Allen, pretty much, as Tony Romo said, he played a perfect postseason.
Yeah, he really did. Well, Joe, moving forward, I definitely think we're going to see the Bengals back in this position in the next couple of years. Depending on how much of the crew the Rams can keep together, still probably be a pretty good team, but you don't really see it moving forward. But wanted to ask you, a lot of people were talking about, of course, how great this Rams team was, but what did you think about the Super Bowl halftime show? I thought it was good. It was very interesting, but I feel like there's a lot of extreme reactions on both ways about what people thought of it, but somewhere in the middle is probably true.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. It had a plethora of so many big name artists over the years, with our childhood and teenage years. But I did think, there's that sense of overreaction where I feel like year in and year out, I always hear people say this is the best or the worst show I've ever heard. I think there's just that recency bias.
Absolutely, Joe. I mean, I was really looking forward to this show, and I thought that it really lived up to a lot of the billing. I liked the ode they had to Tupac. I liked, that you had Dr. Dre and his disciples essentially, but I felt like in my mind, they expanded it too much. There were too many people involved. And to be honest, some people that didn't make a lot of sense. Why did Kendrick Lamar have to be in that? Why did, 50 Cent makes sense, but to be honest, I didn't think that Kendrick Lamar or Mary J. Blige made sense for that. I think that it would have been perfectly fine for you to have Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Eminem, or Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and even 50 Cent, because they all come from the Dr. Dre tree. Dr. Dre founded Snoop Dogg. He found Eminem. Eminem found 50 Cent. There's a clear tree right there. I didn't understand where Kendrick Lamar and Mary J. Blige fell into this.
Yeah, that's kind of a peculiar combination. And also with Eminem, I think a lot of people probably wanted to see him on stage longer because the whole show was only 14 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. That was another thing too. When you start putting like that many people in there, they don't get their own spotlight. And you would have liked to have seen Eminem have a couple songs, Snoop Dogg have a couple songs, and Dr. Dre have a couple songs.
Yeah.
And especially because they had a CD together, all three of them. That's really great. The Chronic Part 2 or the Chronic 2001 was that CD. It's really good. And so I don't know. I just felt like it'd been better if they kept it to those three and maybe 50 Cent added in because he's Eminem's disciple.
you could have split it up, and had a carry over to next year's Super Bowl for some of the others. Like, there was plenty of time to kind of share the wealth.
Absolutely. And that would have been fine. You could have put, Kendrick Lamar and Mary J. Blige and maybe even 50 Cent next year's, and I think that would have been acceptable.
Exactly.
But, it's a really cool scene. Interesting to get to see 2 years in a row the home team win the Super Bowl in their own stadium. And I definitely think that the NFL was beyond ecstatic that they got to have the Rams in that Super Bowl in the brand new SoFi Stadium.
Yep. And now the pressure's on the Arizona Cardinals to host the Super Bowl next year. So we'll see.
Joe, let's just say that I am less than optimistic that we'll see that.
It does look unlikely.
I think I think that there's about as good a chance as the Cardinals winning a Super Bowl they're hosting as there is Auburn having multiple offensive linemen drafted next year.
But I will say, 2 years ago this time, never would have thought Tampa would have hosted. Of course, it took a huge change in order for that to happen.
That's true. Maybe, the Cardinals decide they don't like Kyler Murray as much as they say, and they get Aaron Rodgers, and then suddenly, boom, they have the Super Bowl.
That's what it would take. Yep.
All right. Well, what it takes for us to keep going is for you to keep listening to us. So we look forward to having you on to listen to our next show, and definitely make sure and check out not just our recap of the Super Bowl here, but our earlier interview with ESPN's Cole Kubelik. And big shout out and thanks to him. And as always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.